The cold, metallic hum of the alien warship's engine resonated through the corridors, a sound as chilling as the whispers of death. Captain Ilyas Carter stood with his back pressed to the bulkhead of a sleek alien cruiser, his breath steady despite the chaos unfolding around him. His brown jacket bore singed marks, souvenirs of battles fought and barely survived. Through a cracked viewport, the planet of Thraxis shimmered below, its emerald oceans and golden land masses bathed in the glow of twin suns. But no one aboard cared about Thraxis' beauty. Their focus was on the weapon it hid. "It's called the Spear of Gorrath," whispered Liner Zet, an insectoid scientist from the Kreenar Consortium. Her segmented eyes darted nervously. "It's not just a weapon. It's a planet breaker, Captain. It could tear Thraxis apart with one activation." "Why haven't they used it yet?" Carter asked, keeping his voice low as the metallic boots of enemy patrols echoed in the distance. "The spear wasn't built for war," Liner admitted, her antennae twitching with unease. "It's ancient, a relic from the primogenitors. It requires synchronization. Only a being of pure resonance can wield it." "And let me guess," Carter said with a sardonic grin, "that's where your good human guinea pig comes in?" Liner hesitated, then nodded. "Humans are adaptable. The data suggests your species can interface with the spear's energy fields. If the wrong entity tries to activate it, the backlash could destroy the entire system." "Right. So either I save the galaxy or accidentally wipe it out," Carter muttered. "No pressure." A sharp voice cut through the corridor. "Move! We're not alone." Carter turned his head, just in time to see 3 Xynar enforcers, hulking reptilian brutes clad in obsidian armor, storm into view. Their plasma rifles glowed in ominous blue as they spotted the group. "Run," Liner hissed, her forearms clutching a data pad tightly. But Carter didn't run. Not yet. Instead, he slid a hand to the sleek revolver holstered at his hip. A Terran design, crude but effective against Xynar scales. "Hey, Scaly," he called out, stepping into the open. "Didn't your mom ever tell you not to play with guns?" The lead enforcer snarled and raised his weapon. Carter fired first. The shot wasn't clean. It clipped the enforcer's shoulder, but it was enough to throw them off balance. A second later, the entire corridor erupted into chaos. Liner ducked behind a console, her claws tapping furiously as she tried to override the security locks. Behind her, Torvik Yell, a stoic Velther mercenary with cybernetic implants, was already unloading rounds from his wrist-mounted blaster. "Carter, stop playing hero and get us to the artifact chamber," Torvik barked, his synthetic voice rasping with irritation. "Working on it," Carter retorted, narrowly dodging a plasma bolt that seared past his ear. The group pushed forward, weaving through a labyrinth of corridors until they reached a massive door etched with glowing, ancient runes. The Spear of Gorrath awaited beyond. Liner's mandibles clicked anxiously as she accessed the door's interface. "This system is millennia old. I need time." "We don't have time," Torvik growled, pointing to a blinking red light on the wall. A proximity alert. Reinforcements were closing in fast. Carter slammed his hand against the wall. "Liner, if you can't open it in 30 seconds, I'm kicking it down." "It doesn't work like that." Liner snapped, her claws flying over the console. "This door is tied to the spear's energy matrix. Force it, and we'll be vaporized." Suddenly, the sound of boots grew louder. A dozen Xynar reinforcements rounded the corner, their rifles raised. "Captain," Torvik said grimly, leveling his blaster. "This is going to get messy." "No, it's not," Carter replied. He stepped forward, raising his revolver again. "You're outnumbered, human," the Xynar commander snarled. "Surrender, and we might let you live long enough to see your planet burn." Carter smirked, his finger tightening on the trigger. "Here's the thing about humans," he said, his voice calm but dangerous. "We don't play by the rules." At that moment, Liner shouted, "It's open." The massive doors groaned as they slid apart, revealing a chamber bathed in golden light. At its center, suspended in midair, was the Spear of Gorrath, a sleek, crystalline structure that pulsed with raw energy. Carter didn't hesitate. "Go," he yelled, ushering the others inside as plasma bolts flew past them. The door slammed shut just as the first Xynar reached them, leaving the team alone with the ancient superweapon. In the eerie silence of the chamber, Liner turned to Carter. "This is it," she whispered. "You're the only one who can activate it. But be warned, this isn't just a weapon. The spear will test you. It will judge you." Carter stepped forward, the golden light casting long shadows across his face. "Judgment, huh?" he muttered. "Well, let's hope it likes humans." The chamber pulsed with an unnatural energy, the kind that made your skin crawl and your instincts scream to run. Captain Carter stood at the edge of the glowing dais where the Spear of Gorrath hovered, suspended between arcs of golden light. Its crystalline surface shimmered as if alive, shifting and twisting like a kaleidoscope. "Carter, are you sure about this?" Torvik's mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. The Velther mercenary stood by the door, blaster still in hand. "We don't know what that thing will do to you." "I'm not sure about anything," Carter admitted, his voice unusually quiet. He took a step closer to the spear, feeling a strange warmth radiating from it. "But if the Zynar get their claws on this thing, their access is done for. And probably the rest of us, too." Liner moved to his side, her insectoid features tight with worry. "The spear's technology is sentient, Carter. It doesn't just accept users. It bonds with them. If it finds you unworthy, it kills me," Carter finished, glancing back at her with a faint smirk. "Yeah, you mentioned that part." Before anyone could argue further, the chamber shook violently. The Zynar were trying to breach the doors. "We don't have time for a debate," Carter said, stepping onto the dais. "Whatever this thing is, it's better than getting vaporized by those lizard freaks." As he reached out toward the spear, the light around it intensified, growing brighter and brighter until it was almost blinding. Then, without warning, a voice echoed in his mind. A voice that was ancient and powerful, yet oddly calm. "You are not Zynar." Carter froze, his hand hovering inches from the spear. "No, definitely not Zynar. You are human." The voice seemed to hesitate, as if tasting the word. "Your kind is unpredictable. Dangerous." Carter's brow furrowed. "Dangerous? You're talking to a guy who's been shot at by aliens all day. I'd say that's a two-way street, pal." The voice ignored his sarcasm. "Do you seek destruction? Human? Power? War?" Carter hesitated. The question felt loaded, like a trap. "No," he said slowly. "I'm here to stop the Zynar from using you to destroy this planet. And if I have to use you to do that, then yeah, I'll do it. But I'm not looking for a fight. I'm just trying to survive." The light around the spear dimmed slightly, as if considering his words. "Survival. A primitive motive, yet earnest. You possess humor, resilience, traits unexpected." "I get that a lot," Carter muttered. Suddenly, the chamber trembled again, harder this time. A deep rumble reverberated through the walls as cracks began to form around the doors. "We're out of time, Carter," Torvik shouted. "Whatever you're doing, do it now." Carter clenched his jaw and reached out, his hand brushing the surface of the spear. The instant he made contact, a surge of energy shot through him like a lightning bolt. He screamed, falling to his knees as golden light enveloped his body. "Carter!" Liner cried, rushing toward him. "Stay back," he gasped, his voice strained. "I've got this." The spear's voice returned, louder and more insistent. "You are reckless, flawed, yet there is potential. Show me, human. Show me what you are." The light around Carter intensified, and suddenly, he wasn't in the chamber anymore. He was standing in an endless void, surrounded by shifting stars and fragments of memories, his memories. He saw himself as a child, building crude models of spaceships out of scrap metal. He saw his first mission as a captain, barely escaping an ambush. He saw the faces of people he'd lost, their voices echoing in his ears. Then he saw the Zynar, hundreds of them, invading planets, enslaving entire civilizations. And at the center of it all was the spear, its destructive power unleashed in a blinding wave of fire. "No," Carter said, shaking his head. "That's not how this ends." The stars around him froze, and the voice returned. "You would deny fate?" "Fate's overrated," Carter shot back. "The Zynar think this thing is their ultimate weapon, but they don't get it. It's not about destruction. It's about creation. Balance." The void trembled, and the stars began to realign, forming a new image. The spear, no longer a weapon, but something different. Something smaller, simpler, almost playful. The voice softened. Creation is a path few choose. Perhaps you are worthy after all. Carter gasped as the vision ended, and he found himself back in the chamber. The spear's light had dimmed, and its shape had changed. It now resembled a small, crystalline rod, glowing faintly with golden light. What just happened? Liner asked, her eyes wide with disbelief. Carter grinned, holding up the transformed artifact. I think I just gave the galaxy's biggest weapon a career change. Before anyone could respond, the chamber doors exploded inward, and the Zynar stormed inside. Drop the artifact, the Zynar commander roared. Carter stood his ground, the glowing rod in his hand. You want it, he said, his grin widening. Catch. He tossed the rod toward the commander. The Zynar's clawed hand shot out to grab it, only for the artifact to emit a high-pitched sound. The entire chamber froze as the artifact projected a hologram of a dancing, colorful figure, a children's toy, complete with cheerful music. The Zynar stared at it in stunned silence. What is this? The commander growled, his voice dripping with confusion and rage. Carter crossed his arms, his grin turning into a smirk. It's called fun, pal. Something you Zynar wouldn't understand. The Zynar commander's eyes twitched as the holographic figure continued its cheerful jig, its colors vibrant and nonsensical. The jaunty tune filled the chamber like an uninvited guest, shattering the oppressive silence that had followed the artifact's transformation. Explain this, the commander snarled, his claws crushing the edge of his rifle. What sorcery have you done? Carter shrugged, leaning casually against a shattered pillar. Not sorcery. Creativity. You wanted the ultimate weapon, and now you've got it. Go ahead, Commander. Try conquering a planet with a toy that does the cha-cha slide. The Zynar soldiers glanced at each other, their confusion evident. One of them, a younger warrior with sharp green scales, hesitantly reached for the rod. The moment his claw touched it, the artifact shifted again, projecting a new hologram, a comically oversized animal with floppy ears and a goofy grin. I am Mr. Wobblekins, the projection announced in a bubbly voice. Let's be friends. The young Zynar dropped the artifact as if it had burned him, hissing in alarm. What trickery is this? The commander barked, his patience unraveling. The Spear of Gorrath is a weapon of annihilation, not this madness. Carter pushed off the pillar, his tone suddenly serious. That's where you're wrong. The spear isn't just a weapon. It's a tool that reflects its user's intentions. You wanted destruction, so it gave you the power to destroy. But me? I'm not interested in blowing up worlds. I wanted something the galaxy hadn't seen before. Something that disarms instead of kills. The commander snarled, raising his weapon. You dare mock the Zynar? I'll. Before he could finish, the artifact activated again, this time projecting a field of shimmering light. The Zynar soldiers froze mid-motion, their weapons suddenly turning into harmless foam props. The commander stared at his rifle in disbelief as it drooped like a wet noodle. Carter couldn't suppress his laughter. See? Way more effective than vaporizing anyone. Now you're just a bunch of overgrown lizards with pool noodles. Captain, I don't think they're finding this as funny as you are, Liner muttered, her mandibles twitching nervously. The Zynar commander's eyes burned with fury. Enough of this. We don't need weapons to crush you. He lunged forward, claws extended, but before he could reach Carter, the artifact pulsed again. A soft hum filled the air, and suddenly, the entire chamber was bathed in a soothing, golden glow. The Zynar froze, their aggression melting away. One by one, they dropped to the ground, their expressions slack with confusion. The commander stumbled, his claws twitching uselessly at his sides. What is happening? He growled, his voice tinged with panic. It's called empathy, Carter said, his voice quiet but firm. The artifact's showing you what it feels like to be on the other side of your wars. The pain, the loss, the fear. The Zynar commander staggered, clutching his head as if trying to block out the flood of emotions. This is unnatural. We are warriors. Conquerors. Not anymore, Carter said, stepping closer. You're not fighting some ancient weapon now. You're fighting an idea. And let me tell you, Commander, ideas are a lot harder to kill. The chamber fell silent, save for the faint hum of the artifact. The Zynar soldiers sat motionless, their eyes unfocused as they wrestled with the overwhelming wave of emotions. Liner approached Carter cautiously. "You've disarmed them, but what now? They won't just leave empty-handed." Carter glanced at the artifact, which now rested on the ground, its glow dim but steady. "Oh, they'll leave, but not because we're forcing them. They'll leave because they won't have the stomach to stay." As if on cue, the Zynar commander pushed himself to his feet, his face a mask of anguish and fury. He looked at Carter, then at the artifact, and finally at his defeated soldiers. "This isn't over," he spat, his voice trembling. "You may have humiliated us today, human, but the Zynar do not forget." Carter smirked, his eyes gleaming. "Well, next time you come knocking, bring something more creative than genocide. Who knows? Maybe we'll make you a board game instead." The commander snarled but said nothing more. With a barked order, he turned and stormed out of the chamber, his soldiers following in silence. As the last Zynar disappeared through the breached doors, Torvik let out a low whistle. "I'll admit, Carter, I thought you were crazy, but that was impressive." Liner nodded, though her expression remained wary. "You've changed the spear, but what's to stop someone else from twisting it back into a weapon?" Carter picked up the artifact, turning it over in his hands. Its surface was smooth and warm, almost alive. "Because now it knows better," he said. "And so do we." The days following the Zynar's retreat were quiet but tense. Word of Carter's unconventional victory had spread like wildfire through the galaxy. Some called it genius. Others called it madness. A few whispered that it was only a matter of time before someone else tried to claim the artifact and bend it to their will. For Carter, the challenge wasn't over. "I still don't trust it," Liner said as she watched Carter tinker with the artifact in their ship's workshop. The room was cluttered with spare parts, half-finished gadgets, and a suspiciously large number of snack wrappers. "You don't trust anything," Carter replied without looking up. He was carefully affixing tiny, colorful lights to the artifact's surface. "I trust what I can understand," Liner shot back. "And this thing? It's beyond comprehension. It's dangerous, Carter." Carter finally looked at her, his expression calm but firm. "It was dangerous. Now it's, well, a lot less dangerous. Look at it." The artifact, once a sleek and ominous device, now resembled something out of a child's imagination. The holograms it projected were playful and nonsensical. Dancing animals, flying food, and glittering stars. It still pulsed with immense energy, but its intent had shifted entirely. "It's still a galactic-level tool," Liner insisted. "What happens when someone decides they don't like your upgrades? Then we'll handle it," Carter said, turning back to his work. "But for now, this thing isn't a weapon anymore. It's a reminder." "Of what?" Carter smiled, a glint of mischief in his eyes. "That the galaxy doesn't have to be so serious all the time." Weeks later, the artifact made its public debut. Carter, with some help from Torvik and Liner, had managed to broadcast a demonstration to every corner of the galaxy. The event was hosted on a neutral space station, with representatives from countless species in attendance. As the lights dimmed in the grand chamber, a hush fell over the crowd. The artifact floated into view, its colorful lights shimmering like a miniature nebula. "Ladies, gentlemen, and other esteemed beings," Carter began, his voice amplified across the room. "You've all heard of the Spear of Gorrath. It's been called a weapon of unparalleled destruction, a relic of terror. But today, I'd like to introduce you to something new." With a wave of his hand, the artifact activated. The holographic projections filled the air. A parade of fantastical creatures, dazzling light shows, and impossibly intricate puzzles that seemed to solve themselves. Gasps of awe rippled through the crowd. Some of the more stoic species leaned forward, their curiosity piqued despite themselves. "This," Carter continued, "is what happens when you stop thinking about power as a means to dominate and start thinking about it as a means to connect. The artifact doesn't destroy anymore. It creates, it inspires, and, most importantly, it teaches." He stepped aside as the artifact projected a new scene. A group of alien children playing with a set of interactive puzzles, their laughter echoing through the chamber. War doesn't have to be our legacy, Carter said. We can build something better, something brighter. And it starts with the simplest things: a spark of curiosity, a shared laugh, a moment of understanding. The crowd erupted into a mix of applause and astonished murmurs. Even the most hardened warriors couldn't deny the power of what they had just witnessed. Not everyone was convinced. Rumors began to circulate about factions plotting to reclaim the artifact, to strip away its playful exterior and restore its destructive potential. Carter knew that peace was fragile, that his work was far from over. One evening, as he stood alone on the observation deck of the ship, Liner joined him. "You know this won't last forever," she said quietly. "I know," Carter replied, his gaze fixed on the stars. "But it's a start, and sometimes that's all you need." Liner studied him for a moment, then nodded. "You're an infuriating optimist, Carter. But I'll admit, you've done something incredible." "Thanks," Carter said with a grin. "Now let's hope I don't regret turning the galaxy's deadliest weapon into a toy store." Years later, the artifact had become a symbol of change. It was no longer a feared relic, but a celebrated tool of innovation and creativity. Schools, research institutions, and even artists from across the galaxy had found new ways to harness its energy. As for Carter, he continued his adventures, always one step ahead of those who sought to exploit his creation. He knew the galaxy would always have its dangers, its conflicts, but he also knew that sometimes the best way to fight darkness wasn't with more darkness, it was with light. And in a galaxy teetering between chaos and hope, one human had proved that even the smallest spark could ignite a revolution.